Hello, welcome back to Tips and Tricks. My name is Season Summers, and today we're gonna tackle trills and learn how to feel more comfortable and confident with those. So, first things first, we're gonna use Etude number 5 as an example because it has so many trills in it. So I've taken the time to highlight each of those that you can see. And I wanted to point out, before I move on to fingerings, that the trills in measure 3 are the same trills that are in measure 27. So I didn't list the fingerings twice on the next slide because they're the same fingerings. So I just want to point that out while I have the music up in front of you. Okay, so the first thing is you need to know how to finger the trill. So it's important to know in the oboe that when we trill, we're only going to move one finger. So if you find yourself doing a trill and you're moving more than one finger, there is a more efficient way to execute that trill. That's not true on all instruments, but it is on the oboe. So this is what a trill fingering chart looks like. If you haven't seen one before, and you can purchase those just like you can get a regular fingering chart. So if you would like to have one of those, you can find those online. Any double reed vendor, I'm sure Amazon, right? Okay, so what we're looking at is a fingering, and then there will be one key that's a different color than the rest, and that's the wiggle finger. That's the finger that moves to create the trill. I like to call it wiggles. How many wiggles are you gonna do, right? So what we're really gonna do is we're gonna finger the printed note on the page, and then we are gonna find a way to go to the note right above it and back quite quickly and efficiently. That's essentially what the trill is, right? So if we look at the first one, we are fingering an E, and we're going to trill to the note above, which is an F sharp. Instead of an F natural, it's F sharp because of the key signature. And that one's pretty self-explanatory because we just fingered both notes the same, E to F sharp, right? But let's look at the next one. The next one is a half whole D. And again, the note above D would be E, so we're trilling back and forth. We're going back and forth between D and E quite quickly. So we don't have time to do E with the thumb and covering the half hole. That would slow us down. So we're just gonna leave the half hole open and just move this one finger. Now I'm gonna play it both ways for you so that you can hear that the trill fingerings, when we go slow, you can hear that the tone quality is not very nice. But when we're trilling, you can't hear that. So when we're doing slow practice, it may sound terrible to you, but just remember that in the context, the speed it's going to go, no one will be able to know. So if I do D to E with real fingerings, and then I do D, E, D with the trill fingering, the E sounds fuzzier, less focused, and that's because that's not the real fingering. Okay, so just be aware that that is normal for a trill fingering. You're not doing anything wrong. Then we've got B to C. That one's pretty obvious, right? And then let's talk about this one. A sharp to B natural. This one is a little different. It's not so easy to just figure out on your own. So we're gonna finger A sharp, and we're using the side octave key because this is the A sharp above the staff in the context of the etude, but this does work in the lower octave. If you ever come across it, just take the octave key off, right? And then you're gonna add your pinky to the G sharp or the A flat key. And what that does is when I push that key down, it holds this A key down. Hopefully you can see that moving on my oboe. And so then when I'm trilling, all I'm really doing is opening and closing the hole. That's what makes it a half step trill instead of a whole step, which would be the A sharp to a B sharp, a C, B flat to C, right? So you want to keep the pinky down, and then we're just wiggling the left hand middle finger, okay? So that one might take some extra practice because I know that is not very common. Then we've got G to A. This is another one that will have a strange sound on the A. The G is the normal fingering, but normally when we do A above the staff, it has the side octave key, and we don't have time for that. So the A is going to maybe sound a little fuzzy. F sharp to G sounds good, normal fingerings. And then this is just the G to A without the thumb because we have that at the end of the etude. So perhaps you want to take a screenshot of these fingerings and you could have that handy when you're practicing. Or like I said, you could invest in a trill fingering chart if you would like to, and then have all the trills in one place. It is really handy to have. All right, so this is the exercise in the free handout. This is just one way that you can practice trills. And we are going to focus on trying to develop some finger technique for trills so that you have more control, because that's one of the things that makes trills difficult, especially like the A sharp to B, which is so unfamiliar. So we really want to make sure that you keep your fingers nice and relaxed, right? And that when you're moving the trill finger, that the movement is as small as possible. We don't want this, okay? So we're going to try and keep the distance that the finger comes up as close to the key height as possible, not leaving the key, so that you are more efficient, right? This is important to focus on when you're practicing slowly. Also, the higher you go up, the harder it is going to land when you come down. So if you're hearing a lot of like key noise, maybe practice it in front of a mirror and watch your fingers and make sure that they're not flying away. It's something that I'm constantly working on because my fingers want to do that too. Most of us do. So just be aware that that's a normal issue. Okay, so what we're going to do is, if you don't have your oboe, pause the video, get your oboe, because you can play along with me on this. And we're going to practice going back and forth between two notes, doing various rhythms at the same speed. Okay? So I'm going to have the metronome on 60. I think that's an excellent tempo to practice at, because you can see that we start off nice and friendly and slow with eighth notes, but we're going to work our way gradually up to octuplets, 4 on the downbeat and 4 on the upbeat. So that does get quite brisk. So there's no need to make the metronome go any faster than 60. Okay? There's also no need to do octuplets on your first day, by the way. So if that's freaking you out, don't worry about it. You can build up to that later. Okay. So if you will go ahead and get your oboe out, what we're going to do is we're going to play through the measure one time and then pause and talk about it and then move on and play the next. And we'll just kind of breeze through those. And of course, in your practice time, you would spend way more time on that. And you can repeat them. Okay, so let's try the eighth notes. One time through. 1, 2, ready. And you could end on a B if you wanted to. So I want to point out one thing, and hopefully you heard that my B's are a lot louder than my C's. I don't have a magical oboe. I'm doing that on purpose because we know C is louder than B on the oboe, right? On most oboes. So I want the note that's printed on the page, or the lower note in the trill, always to be the focus of the trill. The upper note is just the ornament. It's not as important. So we need to bring that lower note out more. So I'm just focusing on the lower note, making sure that I keep my attention on there, almost as if I was just holding. Like that, okay? So make sure you hear more of the lower note. All right, let's try the triplets. Let's end on a B. Let's end on a downbeat. 1, 2, triplets. Okay, and then 16th notes. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we're really getting into it. Sextuplets, okay? 3 notes on the downbeat and 3 notes on the upbeat. 1, 2, and 3. If that was like not doable, don't worry. I don't think I would have been able to do that right away either in high school. So you may have to really build up to that. And again, if it's easy for you, make sure that you can hear the B louder than the C. And then let's end with the octuplets. Okay? 1 and 2 and ready and... So that's the most like a trill, right? Because we're going faster. Okay, so Practice that with all the different trill fingerings that I had on the previous slide, and in fact, any trills that you need to do. Okay, that's a great way to do that. Now, here's your tricks. Number one, isolate your trills, right? Which is what we're talking about now. What I mean by that is practicing the music without the trills and practicing trills separately from the music. And then once they become more comfortable, reliable, or you just want to see how you're doing, then you can put them back in the context of the music and see how it goes. And that might give you great feedback to know then what do I need to do in the practice room. You need to decide when the trill is supposed to stop. Most of the time when I hear students struggling with trills, they're trying to trill for too long. So here's a tip. Make sure that you hear the printed note on the page, the lower note of the trill, before you start trilling. And you also want to hear it after you do the trill, before you move on to the next notes. And that includes before you play the grace notes, if there are some after the trill, or just whatever the next downbeat is, okay? So, yeah, makes sense. We want to hear that, and it means your finger is going to wiggle less amount of times, which, hallelujah, makes it easier. Focus on the lower note. We talked about that. We don't want to sound like, I'm sure you've had that kind of explosion from your oboe. I certainly did, especially in junior high. That happened to me a lot. So if I focus more on the lower note, that minimizes that sound. If you listen to professionals playing trills, you're going to notice that most of the time they start the trill kind of slow and then they speed it up. That makes it sound more expressive, so we just don't want the finger movement to be the same all the way through the length of the trill. That makes it sound more like noise, okay? So it may not always need to start slow and speed up. Maybe it does the opposite, but just make sure it's not the same speed. You can talk about that with a teacher. That's a great thing to do. Decide if it's a crescendo or a decrescendo. Hopefully by now you guys have marked in dynamics. So that way your air can give it movement as well. That makes it sound even more expressive. And then of course, if you have any other ideas, you can share those in the comments. Okay guys, that's it for today. I really think that if you work on these, you will become an excellent triller, which is why we have a movie from the Triller thing. If you know what that is, give me a shout out in the comments, because I'm worried some of you guys may have no idea what that is from. Okay, and yes, that's Michael Jackson. So I will see you guys next Friday. I hope you enjoyed the videos. Let me know if you want to request a topic or if you have any questions. All right. Have a great weekend. Bye.